Welcome to your Left-Handed Bandit mobile paint party experience. Today's theme is going to be the 716 kitchen logo. We're going to get started by talking about the supplies that you should have with you and then get right into the painting. So with you or within your kit should include black paint, you should include yellow paint, white paint, and red paint. When we mix our yellow and our red, we get orange, of course. If we mix black and white, we get gray. If we mix red and black, we get maroon, yellow and white, light yellow. You see where I'm going with this? So we can mix multiple different colors for our theme painting with the colors that we have in this kit. In addition to the colors, you should have a pre-plotted canvas with the logo already on it. You should have two paintbrushes. You should have a average size paintbrush, a smaller brush for doing some of the finer details. You should also have a foam brush. So two brushes. Each person will need one of each brush. In addition to your brushes, a palette works. You could use a paper plate, something hard and flat like a piece of cardboard, anything that is going to be disposable after. Your kit should come with a paper towel. Those come in handy. And a cup of water is going to be a very, very valuable tool with this painting. So this is a dope logo, and I don't mean to make it sound as though it's simplistic, because in no means do I mean that. But if we want to go about painting this logo, it wouldn't come out exactly how our logo looks digitally. So we need to create a painted version of this logo. And to do that, it's not going to be hard. It's very, very easy to paint this logo. And as long as you follow the steps in this video, you'll be able to do it very, very easily. I have off screen a reference for the logo, and you may have a visual representation in front of you somewhere nearby for you to refer to as well. I'm using these four colors mainly to create these images and these paintings. And like I said, as long as you follow each step, you'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and stop rambling and get into what we'll need to do. So with our average size paintbrush, I'm going to lay him to the side just for now. And I'm going to pick up my sponge brush. And with my sponge brush, I'm going to take just a small bit of black paint. And you can either put that on your palette or keep it in the cup. I'm just going to take it directly from the cup. And with this black paint, I'm going to create a frame around my logo, a frame with black paint using that sponge brush. So I'm just filling in my edges, and I'm leaving a little bit of space for the difference between the actual logo and the black paint. So in other words, paint black, a nice smooth layer of black. However, I want you to leave a little bit of space in between the black paint and the logo. So the reason we're laying on this black paint is just to get a head start on our background. We want to get a head start because there's a couple of different things. Even though this logo has a solid black background, I got a couple of ideas that we can incorporate to make this background stand out just a little bit more. So I'll go through showing you those different things. My canvas adjusted a little bit, so I'm moving it back. But I am painting a nice, smooth, flat layer of black paint. Now, this is acrylic paint. Acrylic paint dries very, very fast. In order to get this background nice and solid, we have to layer up. So another reason that we're painting the background first and just leave a little bit of space is just because we want to get a head start on this background so that when we put that second layer of black on, it's going to be nice and bold and crisp, and you won't be able to see any of the background white. So as you're painting, you're going to be painting and noticing that you may be able to still see the background, and that's okay. That second layer of paint that we put on in just a bit, we'll go ahead and cover that up nice and full. So I'm painting in around the logo the best that I can. If you touch your logo just a little bit, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. So I got my background painted in, and I got a little bit of space on the outline. of this logo. So I'm going to take my sponge brush. I'm going to come back to this later. I'm going to just wipe the excess paint off of him onto my paper towel. So I'm smoothing both sides of my paintbrush off of my paper towel, getting that excess paint out of my foam brush, and I'm just gonna either lay it to the side or drop it in water, whichever is best for you. I don't like to drop mine in water. I just like to wipe the excess paint off, and I drop it in water when I'm done using it for the day. Now I'm going to switch to my average size paintbrush, and we're going to begin with using our red paint. And we're only going to use just a touch of red paint for these first couple of steps. And you're going to put a few different streaks inside this ember of flame. Now, we're going to work in our reds, and then we're going to work in our yellows, and those are going to start creating some oranges for us. And then we're going to work in our whites and possibly just a little bit of black. We'll see how things go. But in order to do that, when we paint, we need to paint through this logo. So we need to paint through the chef hat that we see. Now, your canvases are pre-plotted, so you'll be able to still see the chef logo through the paint that we put over it. So for these next several steps, don't worry about painting over the chef's logo. We'll still be able to make it out later. Just make sure you don't use too much paint. Just gonna make a couple of adjustments to my other brush. All right, got my adjustments made. Sorry about that, some quick technical difficulties, but we're back. So we are going to, as I mentioned, we're painting through this chef's hat. We're painting through the chef's hat using our red, using our yellow, and using our white. We're going to be painting this flame. This is a pre-plotted image, so even when we put in that paint, we'll still be able to still see our logo, so we can bring that back and paint that in later. So average size paintbrush for this step, and then we're going to grab just a touch of red. We don't need too much red. And with that first few stripes of red, we want to move with the shape of the actual fire. Move with the shape. So I'm streaking in some red up here. I'm going to streak in a little bit of red on the side over here. The reason why we left a little bit of space is so that our red doesn't touch our black too easy, and that's going to start affecting our colors. So now we got to have a nice pure red without fear of touching and mixing with that black that we recently painted on. That's nice and wet still. So I'm going to go to the bottom, and I'm turning my brush in different directions so that I may change the direction of the brush and create different effects with my brush. So play around with turning your brush different directions. So I'm going to come over here on the left and paint some more streaks of red going down over here. And again, I am moving with the shape of my flame. If you have a reference, then move with the shapes of the colors that you see. I'm going to connect some red from here and move it down here. Notice again, my curves are taking different directions, which means that I'm following the shape of the flame. Pretend like you're actually painting real flame. Now I know that sounds kind of stupid, but because real flames would obviously burn you, but right now pretending like we're painting the real flame is going to actually help us keep the shape of that actual flame. So now that I got that red in there, I want to take the time out to take this excess red paint off of my paintbrush. So I'm not going to dip it in water. I want these colors to blend in with the next color. So instead of dipping it in water, take this brush and wipe the excess off on your paper towel. So I'm wiping the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto my paper towel. It still has paint on it, but it's no globs at all. With this red paint still being wet, I'm going to switch to my yellow paint, and I'm going to go ahead and use some of these filling spaces in between and fill that in with yellow. Now for the first few swipes of paint, try your best to avoid this red. We want to avoid making orange immediately. Right now we're just focusing on adding the yellow. We're going to avoid our red the best we can. If we mix here and there, it's no big deal because we'll have to mix in a few minutes anyways. I also want you to keep just a little bit of that white background open because we got one more color to mix in, at least for now. So now I got my yellow mixed into there, and the red and the yellow touch just a little bit, but not enough for them to blend. And on this next step, we're going to wipe the excess paint off of our paintbrush and onto our paper towels again. And we're going to switch to just a touch of white paint. So with this white paint, I'm going to go ahead and focus on areas in the fire that are still white in the background. I add just a little bit of white there, here and there. If you need to wipe some excess paint off your paintbrush, feel free to wipe that off on your paper towel. But we want to streak in some white paint because that's going to help us blend nice and smooth and give us some different colors. So we have our red on the canvas, we have our yellow on the canvas, and we have our white on the canvas. Now it's time to start blending those colors together. So as we paint, again, make sure you're painting with the direction of the flame. Now, I'm already starting to lose if I could talk. I'm losing a lot of my yellow already. So we want to make sure we keep a good amount of that yellow. We can always add in more layer. So instead of continuing to just blend, I want you to take just a little bit more yellow, and each time you blend, add just a little bit more yellow. So that way we don't lose all that yellow that we have in there. We don't want it to be overshaded by red. It's not going to look like fire. It's just going to look like a red blob if we did that. In order for it to look like fire, we need a fair amount of red versus yellow in there. We need both colors. And we need some oranges in there too. But we can't get the orange if there's no yellow for it to bond with. Because the yellow keeps its vibrancy. However, the red makes it a bit deeper. So I am using yellow instead of white to blend these colors together. Again, remember to follow the shape of your flame. You should start automatically getting a blend of yellows, oranges, and reds still in the mix. So I'm almost done filling that in. I'm going to grab just a little bit more yellow. Continue following the pattern of this flame. Make sure you have no white showing through in the background anymore. You want to see yellow and red. Now I have a fair amount of yellow and red. And I'm going to let that dry for just a bit. I'm going to take this paintbrush, I'm going to swish it off and get it clean in the water. Tap it on the side of my cup a couple of times. Make sure I dab both sides off on my paper towel and get that excess water out the bristles. It's important to get the excess water out the bristles so that you won't have to worry about paint dripping down your canvas as you're painting. So the next thing that we're going to do before we give our canvas a break so that we can add the fun effects to this is two steps actually. The first step, while we let this flame dry a bit, is we're going to bounce from the flame back to our background. Instead, we're focusing on the full background. We're going to focus on this area right here that we left with the original white background. And we're going to fill that in with our average size paintbrush, and we're going to use black paint for that part. Once that's filled in, then our flame will be a little bit more dry as well. And we can go ahead and add a couple more details to that. And then from there, we'll go ahead and take a break and let the canvas dry completely so that we can finish this painting off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just a touch of black paint, and my canvas that I filled in earlier on the background is kind of wet still. So I'm going to go ahead and just add in this excessive amount of black using my average brush. I'm going to be careful and follow the shape of the flame once again, except we're following the shape of the flame on the outside as opposed to the inside. So we are filling this in on the bottom, curving it around. I'm finding other parts. You can start on whatever part you like. Just make sure it's a nice, smooth layer of paint, no globs, and make sure you're being careful to keep the shape of this flame. We're keeping the shape, being very careful on our edges, taking our time because other parts of our paintings need some more time to dry so that we can work on them. So this is giving them a little bit of extra time. So I'm gonna jump up here. And I'm going to come over here on the side, trying not to lose the shape of that flame. Gets a little tricky. Paint over some of those hiccups from earlier. Smooth around this top right. Double back. Now again, I'm following the shape of the flame as I paint. It just makes it look so much better. However, for the background, if you decide to go in different directions as far as the direction you're painting, it could benefit you. Just try different things. I encourage you to try any creative ideas that you have. So next, I'm going to switch from this average size paintbrush back to my foam brush. And as I said, you can either have dipped it in the water or wiped it off on the paper towel. I never wipe mine off on the paper towel. I never dip mine in the water. I wiped it on the paper towel, so I don't have to dip it in water or have to wring it out. For anyone who put their sponge brush in the water, be careful not to have too much excess water inside the brush. Make sure you rinse it off in your cup, tap it off on the edge of your cup, and then make sure you dab. Make sure you dab both sides off on your paper towel so that you're wringing out that excess amount of water that's in there. Because if you paint with water in that foam brush, it's going to drip down your canvas. So just be careful that all the water is out of that foam brush if you put it in your cup of water. For everyone else, I'm going right back into my black paint, and I'm going to focus on the rest of the background because, as I mentioned, it's mostly dry but not fully dry, but there's spaces of white coming through, and we need that a lot more vibrant, well, a lot more wholesome of a black. So we can get that by going over this black with an extra layer of black. So it's simply coating our first base coat and making it a lot darker, a lot smoother, a lot more saturated. Some canvases may take a third layer when it dries. That's fine. Mine is looking pretty good with its second layer so far. Curving right around there. Coming over here, getting the same thing. Coming down on this left side, losing my shape a little bit. Gotta save face. So I'll leave it there for now. If I wanted to, I could always go back and add a third layer of black paint, but I think that's good. So I'm all set on this sponge brush, at least for now. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in my water. And if I need to use that later, I can just go ahead and wring it out and use it again. However, for these next couple of steps, I'm going to use my average size brush again. Make sure that average size brush is nice and clean. Make sure you swish it around in your water, tap your brush off on the side of your cup, dab both sides off on your paper towel, and then make sure that paintbrush is nice and clean and dry. I'm going to go ahead and touch up the inside of my flames with just a little bit of white paint. A little bit of white paint is going to add a little bit of a pop, a little bit of some details and highlights, because that white's going to blend with some of that red and some of that yellow and create its own type of thing. So the point of this is just to add more flair to the painting. Now, you don't have to do this if you don't think this is looking good, but these are the couple of steps that I like to take and that I encourage you to take that will allow us to create the best painting absolutely possible. So if I wanted to, when this dries up completely, I can go in with some more white. However, I think that'll be fine. So if yours looks anything close to this right now, feel free to take a break. This acrylic paint usually dries within 7 to 10 minutes. So I would say take no longer than a 12-minute break, and then you can jump back to it. I'm going to let mine dry, and then in the second part of the video, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and film the rest and then add your own flair to this. So I will see you in the next part of the video.